उन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपा कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकं। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरो श्रीयुतापदकमलं श्रीगुरून् वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सहगण रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्री राधा कृष्ण पादान् सहगण ललिता श्री विशाखान्वितांश्च। हे कृष्णा करुणा सिंधो दीनबंधो जगत्पते गोपेश गोपिका कांत राधा कांत नमोस्तुते। तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये। वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमदे भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामिन् इति नामने। नमस्ते सारस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पश्चात्तरेशतारिणे। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि गौर भक्त वृंदा। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरये। श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय। मूकं करोति वाचालं पंगुं लंघयते गिरिं यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे श्रीगुरो दीनतारिणं परमानन्दं माधवं श्रीचैतन्य ईश्वरम्। So, welcome back again, and I'll do my humble efforts to speak a little bit on Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our spiritual master in one sense. So please forgive me for any shortcomings. And thank you again for this opportunity, even though I'm not qualified. I'll try to do a little bit justice. So today I would like to cover or speak on the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 7, Chapter 7. And this canto is well known for the pastime of the Srimade Bhagavan with his very dear devotee, Sri Prahlad Maharaj. There is so much of enlightenment packed in this one book. And today's session, we will just try to touch upon Chapter 7. The name is What Prahlad Maharaj Learned in the Womb. And I have a little PowerPoint, so which I would like to share. And I'll try to do the slideshow. So here I am giving a title, The Guru Telling the Story of His Disciple. So Shri Guru here is Narad Muni, and he is recalling the learning place of Shri Prahlad Maharaj, which is the womb of his mother. So it's a very wonderful situation where the Guru himself is glorifying his disciple and telling the story. So how does it happen? So Srimad Bhagavatam, I would like to cover a little bit of the background, or just to get into the mood of what Prahlad Maharaj was learning in the womb and how he was learning. So I have a couple of slides here just to get into the background and just get into that entire ambience of Prahlad Maharaj's situation. So Srimad Bhagavatam, as we all know, is a network of dialogues within dialogues. It's a beautiful structure, and it's amazing. So in the beginning, there is the dialogue between King Parikshit and Shukadev Goswami. And the very first question in this canto that King Parikshit asks is whether the Lord is partial or impartial, because he has doubts. The Lord sometimes helps demigods, and it doesn't seem to be very justice to the demons. So he was concerned about this question, whether the Lord is partial or impartial. And in that discussion, Shukadev Goswami glorifies Narad Muni, that, oh, Narad Muni always gives these kind of answers in Srimad Bhagavatam, where he's always leading such discussions. And that leads Shukadev Goswami to bring in a dialogue between Narad Muni and King Yudhishthir, which is on the topic of Lord's impartiality and equal benedictions to demigods and demons. So in the answer, Shukadev Goswami brings in this another sub-dialogue between Narad Muni and King Yudhishthir, where Narad Muni is citing the story of Hiranyakashipu and his own unique disciple, Prahlad Maharaj. So the presentation now will be the dialogue of Prahlad Maharaj instructing his friends from demoniac families. There are so many dialogues. The dialogue of Hiranyakashipu in the beginning with his staff, and then the dialogue between Hiranyakashipu and Prahlad Maharaj. And then it leads to Prahlad Maharaj's dialogue between himself and his friends who are from his school. They're coming from families who are not very devotee families. They're coming from demoniac families. Their fathers, their mothers are of demoniac mentality. So Prahlad Maharaj is talking about the importance of spiritual education right from the beginning, and the importance of devotional service, where he covers the entire instruction of Bhagavad Dharma to be started from the very beginning of life. And as we all know, Prahlad Maharaj is 5 years old boy at that time. And in that dialogue with the friends, Prahlad Maharaj shares the secret of the source of his knowledge. And the secret, then that source of his knowledge is his guru, Srila Narad Muni. And it's very surprising to the friends, like they ask, Prahlad, where did you meet your guru? You have been here, you have been 5 years old, you have been sitting here with us most of the years in this school. And we don't know, when did you meet your Gurudev? So where did you meet your guru? So I would like to read just one or two verses in the chapter where he's talking to his friends, which is the 6th chapter. And Prahlad Maharaj replies to this question of his friends that I received this knowledge from the great saint Narad Muni, and this knowledge of Bhagavad Dharma is very much based on logic and philosophy. And I learned this knowledge from my spiritual master, and he tells the whole story. He tells the whole story, and that opens the chapter 7. So where he tells the story that when his father Hiranyakashipu went into the forest for austerities, his mother was literally kidnapped by the demigods, because the demigods were fearing that another demon will come out of her womb and will create havoc. So they wanted to take her, and only when the child comes out, they wanted to kill the child and keep her just away from, just keep her aloof from there. But there appears Narad Muni. Narad Muni is a very kind, compassionate spiritual master. He was already aware that there is a great devotee in the womb, and he saves Kayadu, who is the mother of Prahlad, and he offers her all protection, all care. He takes her to his own ashram, and in that ashram, even though she's a woman, we'll talk about that more, he sits down and he instructs her completely in Bhagavad Dharma. He covers all the topics starting from Karma Kanda, Karma Yoga, Vedas, Dhyana Yoga, Bhakti, very much Bhakti. And she hears very attentively because she has faith. She has faith, so she hears attentively. She offers service to her guru, Narad Muni. And while that is happening, Prahlad, who is in the womb of his mother, is listening to Narad Muni. Is listening very carefully. Because as Bhagavatam explains, the consciousness is there, the mind is there, the intelligence is there. As soon as couple of months or some short period of time is passed, and in the womb, the child is ready. The child is ready to listen to everything that's being said outside. So in this way, Prahlad Maharaj was learning. And that secret he shared with his friends. Let's move on to the next slide. I would like to say, I'm sorry, in the background there'll be a little sound, but please forgive me for that. So Prahlad Maharaj is learning in the womb. So let's divide today's discussion in these 3 points. How did Prahlad learn what he learned? And that will cover the first 16 verses. And then side by side, I'll be talking about what we can learn about how he learned. And we'll cover the actual information that Prahlad Maharaj shared, or what he learned actually in the while staying in the womb of his mother. And those are the most of the verses from this chapter, starting from 17 to 55. So I would like to spend a little more time on how he learned what he learned, because what he learned is always, we can read, and there's so much parallelity between what he's saying here and Srimad Bhagavad Gita instructions by Lord Krishna. So there may not be something very new or very different or unique that is there. Of course, there is so much learning, but I think it would be also a good idea to spend some time on the process, how he learned in the womb, because there may be so many practical lessons for us in that process. And then definitely we will touch upon the actual learning that happened between him and his guru in that difficult situation of being in the womb. So I have given this particular slide a title saying Prahlad speaks the story of his experience in the womb. And as I mentioned, Narad Muni, he arrived on the scene where demigods were trying to kidnap her for killing her baby. And he finds, because Narad Muni is an empowered incarnation of the Lord, and he participates in the plans of the Lord, he was aware that there is a great devotee inside. And we can say that he found his disciple there. So there's always this saying that Guru will find the disciple, in addition to the disciple finding the Guru, because the Guru will be sent by Krishna. And that way, this is a great example where Guru is finding the disciple and not finding anywhere, but in the womb. It's such a unique situation that even being covered, Narad Muni knows that there is Prahlad, he's going to be my disciple. So Narada intervenes to stop the killing of this great soul. And he tells the demigods, who are headed by Indradev, that don't do this. And the important point there is that he says that you will not be able to kill him, because he's aware of this situation. So any great devotee who has a purpose to serve the Lord in the Lord's plan will not be killed by anybody, will not be in a position to get killed by anybody. And the interesting part here to learn is that how obediently Indradev, along with the demigods, honored Narad Muni's instructions. They immediately accepted what Narad Muni instructed them to stop, because there is a devotee and they will not be able to touch the devotee. So there's no question of killing. So they accepted immediately the authority of Narad Muni as guru in the parampara system and accepting his words that you will not be able to kill him. So then we have this journey of Kayadu along with her baby in the womb into Narada Muni's ashram. And the point here, as I said before, like we are learning how Prahlad learned what he learned, and then what are we learning side by side. So there will be some points that will come side by side for us, for our learning. So the first point that we learn, that how to honor the instructions of the guru with faith. And the second point here is that the journey of Kayadu, and looking at her chastity, she is concerned about her baby, her husband, and she's concerned about the dignity of her own motherhood. And then she approaches Narad Muni, as Narad Muni offers her, this proposal that you come with me, I'll protect you from all sides in all different ways. And she approaches as a devotee in distress, even though she's not devotee as such, but she has faith, she has trust in Narad Muni and his proposal. And it is mentioned in this particular chapter that she prays very fervently to the higher divine authority, whosoever she thought was, and she prays for the protection, and she agrees to go with Narad Muni, and she serves him with faith. With full faith, she offers devotional service to him as much as she can, because she understood that this is going to be my spiritual master. So we can see her as this Artha devotee. In Bhagavad Gita, one of the four types of devotees, the Artha, who are in distress and they approach the Lord. So she's approaching in that way as an Artha, right? And she's serving. So that's another thing. And then what happens is that Prahlad becomes very eager to learn whatever's being said by Narad Muni. And here I will read a couple of lines from the chapter 7, the very first summary paper, the page. So it says that taking advantage of those instructions, Prahlad Maharaj, although a small baby within the womb, listened very carefully. And while living in the womb of his mother, he received instructions in devotional service from Narad Muni. Any person engaged in the service of the Lord through the instructions of a bona fide spiritual master is immediately liberated. And being free from the clutches of Maya, is relieved of all ignorance and material desires. So the womb is a very difficult place, a very adverse situation for learning anything. What to speak of surviving? I mean, just for surviving, it's hard. So what to speak of learning anything from there? And as we know, Bhagavad Gita, in the 3rd chapter, there is this analogy that Lord Krishna gives about how much the lust is covered. And one of the most deepest covering is been said as the womb, because the consciousness is as covered as a baby in the womb. So we understand from there, Bhagavad Gita, that this position in the womb, I'm sorry, I have a little noise in the background from Neil, so I'm going to put him just 1 second. Sorry. So yeah, so the womb is a very difficult place, and Prahlad Maharaj has not considered that as a problem. So he mentions Bhagavatam that the duty of everyone is to take shelter of the Lord and thus become free from material desires, regardless of the material condition in which one is situated. One can achieve this perfection, regardless of the material condition in which one is situated. Devotional service is not dependent on the material activities of austerity, penance, mystic yoga, or piety. Even without such assets, one can achieve devotional service through the mercy of a pure devotee, Sri Guru. So this is the wonderful lesson for all of us, that we are not as deeply in trouble as Prahlad Maharaj was in the womb. We have life, we have all the facilities, and there is no excuse that can be given to do spiritual progress, to do devotional service, irrespective of our material conditions. Our material conditions should not be an obstacle in our spirituality, which can go parallel, side by side. And it is not affected by whether we are rich or poor, young or old, illiterate or literate, or any other kind of asset or non-asset. So this is the way to look at it, and that it's very nicely mentioned that regardless of the material conditions. So this is something we can always remember, because we have so many complaints sometimes about not being able to do some specific service or not taking up Krishna consciousness seriously. No, but there's no reason for that. We have to figure it out. We have to work on it, work it out. So the other point is that, as the Bhagavatam mentions here, that he listened very carefully. And so attentive hearing from the Guru, from the bona fide Guru. And attentive hearing itself is a devotional service, as we all know, Shravanam Kirtanam. And Bhagavatam, in this particular chapter, it mentions that this immediately liberates that person. So attentive hearing from a bona fide spiritual master and beginning your devotional service immediately makes a difference in our lives. What does it do? It liberates us from the two things: relieves us of ignorance and material desires. And there is a verse, very nice verse, in the 5th canto, that is a prayer to Lord Narasimhadev. And in that prayer, Om Namo Bhagavate Narasimhaya Namas Tejas Tejase Avir Bhava Vajana Khavajatam Stra Karmashyam Randaya Randaya Tamo Grasa Grasa Swaha Abhayam Abhayam Atmani Vishtam Ksham. So that prayer itself, it says that as soon as we begin devotional service, two things happen. There is a prayer that Narasimhadev, please do this. So one is the relieving us from the ignorance and relieving us from the material desires. And you can see in the actions of Prahlad Maharaj, even though he's 5 years old, and he has done this pastime with his father and invoking the presence of Lord Narasimhadev, he has actually displayed this symptom of being relieved from ignorance and material desires and hankering and anxiety, which is exactly the prayer which I mentioned just now to Narasimhadev. So this happens. The point is, when Bhagavatam says that attentive hearing is the beginning of devotional service, and this will bring you a relief from ignorance, material desires, and anxieties. So these are not just words that we say, but it's actually demonstration of Prahlad Maharaj, his own life, as how he was actually able to deal with these things. So this is the attentive hearing that he started doing in the womb. And the other important point is that Prahlad Maharaj explains in this chapter that he was able to do all of this learning in the womb only by the mercy of his Guru, Shri Narad Muni. And that is true, that is evident, because otherwise, how do you communicate with an infant in the womb of some another woman? How do you do that? Unless you have this particular mercy, a very spiritual, potent mercy that is being transferred from the Guru to that living entity in the womb. Unless that happens, how can that work? So when Prahlad Maharaj says that it's 100% my Guru's mercy that I'm able to learn this and repeat this to you, give the instruction, is that my Guru. So in this way, devotional service through the mercy of a pure devotee is very important. And we have to seek in our own lives, where is that mercy? Because that mercy may be standing right in front of us. But we have to open our eyes and look at it and take it. There's no wastage of time. And remember the example of Prahlad Maharaj. He did not consider another time whether I have to listen to this, whatever is I'm being heard, whatever I'm hearing right now in the womb. No, he immediately took up that opportunity. So, and realized that the person who is speaking outside is my guru. So this is a lesson for us, that we always have these opportunities around us, and we just have to open our eyes and accept that, grab that opportunity and start learning, and without wasting time. So this is the great thing. And then another important point, that in this experience of Prahlad Maharaj in the womb is the seed of faith. And again, we can relate it to our own lives. I would like to read this particular verse that Prahlad Maharaj speaks in the 17th verse. He says, Bhavatamapi bhuyan me yadi shraddha dhate vachaha vaisharadi dhi shraddhataha Sri Balanam Chameyatha. He says that, my dear friends, if you can place your faith in my words, simply by that faith, you all can also understand transcendental knowledge, just like me, although you are small children. Similarly, a woman can also understand transcendental knowledge and know what is spirit and what is matter. So the point here is of the faith, the initial faith. You don't have to have the whole gamut of faith like Srila Prabhupada had or Rupa Goswami had. Okay, that's not possible. All we can do is to gather that seed of faith that may be somewhere in our heart, somewhere very deeply situated in our heart, and just bring it out. But that action of bringing out that minute faith is very, very important, and that only you as a person can do, and no one else can do it. No one else can inject from outside something to bring that seed of faith out. So again, it's your very personal work. And Rupa Goswami also in the Bhakti Samrita Sindhu, based on Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's teachings, mentions Adho Shraddha Tatha Sadhu Sangha. So it begins with the Shraddha, and then it goes with that initial faith. We can take that step of going to a group of devotees who are sadhus, who are great devotees, pure devotees, learn their instructions. Everything will begin. But the initial step is Shraddha. And this Shraddha is given to all of us. The Lord is not keeping away any like Shraddha from anyone else. Just like we all are given the basic body, mind, intelligence, the Lord has given us that tiny seed of Shraddha. It only depends on each one of us as to how we bring it out. And even though our situation in this life may not seem like we have any faith, because we may not be very spiritual, we may not be having great people in our families or friend circle or whatever it is, but that doesn't mean that we cannot bring the seed out. So it's a very, very important lesson. I would really emphasize that these words of Prahlad Maharaj, that my dear friends, please see, because you simply have faith in me, that I'm able to say what I learned in the womb. And you can begin with me. You can begin your spiritual education with me. So that is how it is. And there are so many verses that connect with this. And Prabhupada gives all those verses in the purport. It says, Yasya deve yatha bhakti, parabhakti, yatha deve tatha guru, tasyete kadthai artha, prakashante mahatmana. Unto those great souls who have implicit faith, both in the Lord and the spiritual master, all the imports of the Vedic knowledge are automatically revealed. And there are so many, Atha Shri Krishna Namadi, there are so many verses like that. So let's move on to the next slide. And here you won't find much because I haven't written anything, but I just have the heading. So Kayadu, being a woman, Prahlad Maharaj repeatedly says that she forgot the spiritual instructions because she's mother, she's a woman, she has less intelligence. So if you read the chapter 7, you might get a little bit confused or a little bit upset as to why it's being repeatedly said that a woman has no intelligence for spiritual knowledge, she has no memory, all those things, and then what can we really, I mean, I'll try to clarify some of the things in this connection, and based on my understanding, and I hope it will help you. And that's why I didn't want to spend a lot of time in just what Prahlad Maharaj learned, because there's always a scope to connect it with the Gita. But some of these points is how he's learning, how he's understanding, and how this whole chapter is bringing so many lessons for us is more important. So that's how I'm trying to make these points more elaborate. So being a woman is we have to understand, in the Vedic literature, the word woman is not necessarily the physical definition. It's not necessarily how a person is biologically designed or even psychologically designed. What it means is that it's a description of a category of people. They may or may not be physically in that category as a woman, but by their symptoms, by their proclivities, by their mentalities, they all can fall in that definition of a woman. And then there will be people who will not fall in that definition of a woman. They may or may not be in that physical form. So whenever Vedic literature refers to this term woman, we have to keep this mind, this particular definition, so that we will not get agitated or confused, or we will not be disrespecting the instructions. So a woman is a phrase called stri, and
Mataji, we lost the voice.
yes, 1 second. My computer gives trouble always, so I'm trying to join. Let's see how. Yeah, can you see me now? Yeah, I'm sorry. This is
yes.
If that happens, I will be switching on to my phone quickly. I was trying to find another computer, but that happened. Anyway, I'm sorry for this disturbance. Hopefully it will work now. Yeah, so I was saying that woman, so there's a word, Sanskrit word stri, and that means one who wants to expand all the time, vistar, that person wants to be highly engrossed in material activities, and that person is not inclined for spiritual knowledge. That person has always have lust, anxiety, and a very extreme attachment to all the objects around that person. So that is a woman. So the reason why Kayadu was not able to sustain the memory of the spiritual instructions is because, being in that situation, she was extremely connected or attached to her baby. She wanted the baby's safety and the baby's protection. And her whole prayers and her whole devotional service to her guru was mainly focused on this one prayer, that please protect my child until my husband arrives, and I need to keep my child alive and give birth to my child properly. So when a person is in that mode of prayer, the high degree of instructions into Jnana Yoga, Dhyana Yoga, and Bhakti Yoga, with a very high sublime purpose of life, all these instructions will come in the heart, but they will also go, because the person is focused on the immediate protection of herself and her child, or immediate protection of anything that's going on in their lives, not necessarily child or child as such. So this is the reason why it is mentioned that she could not keep the instructions in her heart, and she could not work on them because she was a mother. She had to carry on. Her husband came back, Hiranyakashipu came back, she gave birth to the child, she was the queen. So she was not in that position of a renounced yogi, or not even in the position of a great devotee like Prahlad Maharaj. So that does not mean that today we should connect it to women, saying that women have less spiritual intelligence. No, anybody, and you can take many examples from current life, from the historical, from the Vedic literature. There's so many examples like that. People who are in that mode can also fall in the category of women. So that's my point. But the other point that we can really celebrate Kayadu here is her being a mother. What she did for her child in the womb is something extremely important for mothers and fathers in today's world. She went out of the way to keep trust in the sadhu who just appeared somehow and offered her protection. She had that faith and she followed all the necessary formalities in order to keep that sadhu's mercy on and that sadhu's protection on, so that she can really take care of her child. So that she's a great mother. We sometimes may not even remember that Kayadu is a great example of a mother. But when I was doing this, I thought, yeah, she is. So let's moving on. Hopefully we can move on. Yeah. So now we can come to this point where Prahlad, what he actually learned. And then at the end, I will also speak about Narad Muni, who is a great spiritual master. So let's look at these things. What Prahlad Maharaj learned, and there's a whole list, as I mentioned, going from the 18th verse until 55th verse. But I do not know how much time we have to personally go through every verse. So I just made a list of things that Prahlad Maharaj touched upon while speaking to his friends about his own learning. Like it's like a degree that he obtained, and what all was there in the degree, please tell me. And he lists all the different topics and subject matters that his guru touched upon and Prahlad Maharaj learned. That begins with Karma Kanda. There's a lot of information about how it is a futile effort to do just Karma Kanda with only material desires and not go anywhere else, but just stay within this universe, running up and down, heaven, hell. And then there is a law of karma. There's a discussion on law of karma, transmigration of the soul, and sakama karma. But there's a progression there in the nishkam karma, where Prahlad Maharaj speaks that famous verse about detachment, aham mameti. He says, detach from what mine is and what my body is and what my paraphernalia is. Detach from aham mameti. And then there is a whole big discussion about Jnana Yoga, where Narad Muni is giving him the distinction between matter and spirit. And then there are the very famous words again, neti neti. It's a neti neti process. That is this material or spiritual? No, this is material, discarded. Is this material or spiritual? No, it's material, discarded. And in that way, search what is spiritual by making a distinction between matter and spirit. So there's a whole wonderful instruction on that. And as I said, there's a nature of soul, migration, and there's a lot of discussion on Paramatma realization, how to search that Paramatma in your heart with the help of Dhyana Yoga. And of course, towards the end, there's a whole discussion on Bhakti process. And there's also one verse I mentioned, I don't remember exactly where, but Narad Muni says that there are many processes of reaching the self-realization or higher spiritual progress, many processes. But this Bhakti Yoga is the best because it's directly spoken by the Lord and it's directly recommended by the Lord and it directly pleases the Lord. So that all goes hand in hand with our instructions that we learn from Bhagavad Gita. And in this, while Prahlad Maharaj is sharing with his friends what he learned, he also makes some very interesting questions to his friends, appealing them and questioning them and challenging them as what futility they will find in this material activities and how the spiritual education has to begin from side by side as they are young children, and how it will really make them realize the futility of this material life. So there's a very deep discussion. We can all, go through these verses after this discussion later on. And in this way, I also have another thing to share with you quickly. Let me see if I can. It's this. So you see, what Prahlad Maharaj learned in the womb has been divided into these points here. So Prahlad Maharaj is learning that both the Lord and we are conscious individuals and we are same spiritual quality. And if I put my cursor, you'll be able to see that these are the verses 19 and 20, where this particular subject matter is discussed. And then how to extract the spirit soul. That has been mentioned in verse 21. How to extract the spirit soul. What do you mean by that? A spiritually advanced person can understand how the spiritual particle exists within the body. And thus, by cultivating spiritual knowledge, he can attain perfection in spiritual life. However, one who is not expert cannot understand where that spirit soul is in the body. And this also we can connect with the Bhagavad Gita, where it says that not everybody is able to perceive the soul, which is minute. Some people may just talk about it and not even understand it. So there's the discussion about how to find the spiritual soul within you. It's a process, and again, it's a personal spiritual journey, as we spoke before. And then the next topic is that all sober persons should search for that soul. So there's an appeal by Sri Guru Narad Muni to Prahlad Maharaj while they're talking, that please search for that soul. It's important for a spiritually advanced person to understand how it is so, and where is it, and how I am actually the spirit soul. So all that discussion around the search of the soul is very interesting there. And then I might skip this one, but it says, accept and serve the bona fide guru, spiritual master. And that comes in verses 30 and 31, where Prahlad Maharaj is sharing that what he learned, that one must accept the bona fide spiritual master and render service unto him with great devotion and faith. Whatever one has in his possession should be offered to the spiritual master. And what it means by one's possession is your mind and intelligence, because that's actually what you have, not the material assets. And in the association of saintly persons and devotees, one should worship the Lord, hear the glories of the Lord, glorify the transcendental qualities and activities of the Lord, always meditate on Lord's lotus feet, and worship the deity of the Lord strictly according to the injunctions of Shastra and Guru. So here, Prahlad Maharaj is summarizing the process of bhakti, sadhana bhakti, devotional service through Guru to the Supreme Lord. So that discussion is there about his learning. And he says a very interesting verse, you all could note down, verse number 42. Attempts for happiness always yield distress. This is not to discourage you from your daily activities and your daily maintenance of your family. But it's just a beautiful, I will read it to you, 42 quickly. Yeah, it says, in the material world, every materialist desires to achieve happiness and diminishes distress. Yes, we all connect. And therefore, he acts accordingly. Actually, however, one is happy as long as one does not endeavor for happiness. As soon as one begins his activities for happiness, his conditions of distress begin. So I just wanted to point out that that beautiful verse, and you can read the purport by Srila Prabhupada. It says that if the moment we start looking for happiness, the distress comes. So long as we are continuing to live as per the Lord's plan and doing our best to do our duties properly and create a satisfaction, peace, comfort for spiritual progress, that's fine. But as soon as we start hankering for happiness, that hankering for happiness will bring distress. So that one point. And the ultimately, Prahlad Maharaj ends this chapter by saying the last point, what he learned about seeing Krishna everywhere is the ultimate goal of life. So he speaks about the ultimate goal of life that he learned. And it says that in it's last verse 55, in this material world, to render service to the lotus feet of Govinda, the cause of all causes, and to see him everywhere is the only goal of life. This much alone is the ultimate goal of human life, as explained by all revealed scriptures. So I would like to actually go back to the PowerPoint. Yeah. And I would like to go to the next slide actually. And we covered this just now. So I would like to end this class with the glories of Narad Muni Gurudev, at how wonderful a spiritual master he is and what he did in this pastime of the Lord. So finding the great soul in the Lord's plan was his particular authoritative work. He had the authority from the Lord to go ahead and locate Prahlad Maharaj in the womb of Kayadhu and actually do all the arrangements for the mother's protection first, and then the protection of Prahlad Maharaj in her womb, and then giving him all the instructions. So he is a wonderful spiritual master who represents the Lord in the most amazing way. And using his spiritual authority, we saw how he asserted to the demigods that no, you will not be able to kill the great devotee who is in the womb. So he is not only able to locate, but he's also able to have communication with this disciple who is situated in the womb. Using his spiritual authority, he announces that this devotee is meant for executing the Lord's plan and he is not to be killed. So the Guru is aware of the Lord's plan. He's aware of who all will be playing a role in the Lord's plan. And then he works on protecting and guiding those people or those devotees, those souls, in order to cooperate with the Lord's plan. So this is the nature of Sri Guru and Sri Narad Muni Bhagwan Gurudev. He represents this wonderfully in this pastime. And I would like to actually locate some of the quickly verses where he tells the demigods that I'm going to take care of this woman. What does it mean? He is a renounced person. He's a yogi, he's a sannyasi. And is he going to take the woman in his ashram and keep her? So here's the wonderful example of the spiritual master who is mentioned here in these verses, that he was beyond any material conditioning. He was a transcendental person. He was completely spiritual form, in his own spiritual form. So there was no pollution, there was no contamination of anything. And he was so equipoised. He did not see Kayadhu as a woman, as a pregnant woman, or whatever it is, or being wife of a demon. No, he immediately offered her protection, and he actually worked on her material, like bodily protection and spiritual protection. Because as he took her to his ashram, he made sure that there are arrangements of her physical well-being, her mental well-being, her psychological well-being, and her spiritual well-being. And he became her guru. He did not make any distinction or any discrimination, and he immediately started offering spiritual instructions to her. So that is his amazing pastime of being equipoised and being extremely, it's mentioned in the verses, that he is the extremely compassionate spiritual master for all the fallen conditioned souls. He does not make any distinction. And even like going through the Bhagavatam stories, we see Narad Muni is the most dynamic personality. He goes to the most lowest class of people like Mrigari. He goes to middle class people, householders. He goes to kings and queens who are topmost, sometimes emperors. He goes to Pandavas all the time, and who are the topmost emperors. And he goes to other spiritual planets. He goes to all these, he visits all different planets, and he visits people over there. He meets with all different species of life and gives them instructions. So he's a very, very dynamic personality. He's extremely compassionate. That's why he can do this. And he's equipoised. When he goes to the king's and queen's palace, he works the same way as he works with a Mrigari, with a hunter in the forest. He works in the same way. And I think that I found the verse, it says 7:14. So let's look at that quickly before we end. And the whole description Srila Prabhupada gives about his glory, and how he was a great devotee. Is a great spiritual master. He says that, these are words of Prahlad Maharaj to his friends. He says, my mother, being pregnant, desired safety for her embryo and desired to give birth to me. So thus she stayed at Narad Muni's ashram, where she rendered service unto Narad Muni with great devotion. And in that verse, Srila Prabhupada glorifies Narad Muni's actions. He says, does this mean that Narad Muni transgressed the Vedic injunctions? Certainly he did not. Such injunctions are intended for mundane creatures. But Narad Muni is transcendental to mundane categories. Narad Muni is a great saint and is transcendentally situated. Therefore, although he was a young man, he could give shelter to a young woman and accepted her service. Haridas Thakur also spoke with a young woman, a prostitute, in the dead of night, but the woman could not deviate his mind. And it says, ordinary persons must strictly observe the rules and regulations by staying aloof from the association of women. No one should imitate Narad Muni or Haridas Thakur. And anyone can take shelter of a pure Vaishnava without fear. Because he's a pure devotee, one of the great Mahatmas, there is no fear if even a woman takes shelter of him. And therefore, the mother of Prahlad Maharaj stayed under the protection of Narad Muni without fear from any direction. Similarly, Narad Muni, in his transcendental position, stayed with the young woman without fear of deviation. Narad Muni, Haridas Thakur, and similar acharyas, especially empowered to broadcast the glories of the Lord, cannot be brought down to the material platform. Therefore, one is strictly forbidden to think that the acharya is an ordinary human being. So I would like to end here by making a small prayer to Narad Muni. We seek blessings from him for giving us that drop of the faith that he bestowed upon his disciple Prahlad Maharaj, and that same faith that Prahlad Maharaj distributed to his classmates from demoniac families. May we pray that Narad Muni Bhagwan, Srila Gurudev, give that tiniest drop of faith to all of us, which is already there in our hearts, as I mentioned before, but by his mercy, may he allow us to recognize where that is, where that tiny drop of faith is, and bring it out by his mercy. So let's end this class with that beautiful prayer. And all glories to Lord Narasimhadev, all glories to Prahlad Maharaj, all glories to Narad Muni Gurudev, and all glories to Srila Prabhupada, who brought this literature to us to get enlightened and to awaken our faith. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Nitai Gaur Premanande Hari Bol.
Thank you very much, Mataji.
Thank you, Prabhuji, for this humble opportunity.
Narration, instruction from Prahlad Maharaj and Mother Kaya's life. Anyone has any quick question, one or two, as we are approaching Ratha Yatra arrangements time?
Yes.
Prasadam transportation, various services. We will conclude soon. But if anyone has any questions, one or two, quick, you can unmute and ask. No one?
That's fine, no problem. Because I know everybody's in the Ratha Yatra mood. So I understand.
Okay.
Yes.
We'll conclude then. Let's pray. On Chakal Putarubhisya. Vishnu ki jai. Canto 6 of Srimad Bhagavatam. So, Prabhupada mentions that one should take shelter of Narada Muni for executing devotion service. Especially, he has given the Narada Pancharatra how to execute devotion service. What is Bhakti? The Acharya has given, Lord Krishna has invested all the power of Bhakti in him. So, we should take shelter of him, specifically putting Narada Muni's name. So, in the purport, this is in Canto 6. And especially deity, one who is worshipping deity, and for sure they should take shelter of Narada Muni so that they can avoid the offenses by his strength. And that also Prabhupada mentioned that purport.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.
What purport is that?
This is in, I think, 6th canto, chapter 8. I think one of the first verses.
Okay, I'll check. Thank you very much.
Okay, we'll conclude. So September 6th, Janmashtami is coming up. So anyway, you can help us in various services. If you would like to donate in any way for Kalash or Prasadam sponsorship or any other Arati, please contact us. Today, Radhayatra from 2 to 4 from Cinder Road, Apna Bazaar. Prasadam will be served around 4, 95 Fiat Avenue. Please join us, and Sunday feast is on after the Radhayatra. So from 5:30 onwards. So you can join as well there. And yeah, that's about it. I'll wrap it up now. Thank you for your association and time.
Thank you. Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Thank you for